I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Under the Shadow is over. Djinn are just a fairy tale made up to scare little children. Hold for intensity. Under the Shadow, Andy. Look at what we did. We did Under the Shadow. What do you think? Had you ever seen it?
I hadn't seen this. This is one that Netflix recommended to me over and over and over again. It kept popping up on my recommended list from Netflix when the film came out. And I think a lot of that also, I was seeing it popping up on a lot of like best of lists at the end of the year, at the end of 2016. A lot of people talking about this film, saying it's worth checking out. And I missed it. I had not seen it, but it had been on my Netflix watch list since it came out. It's just been sitting there. I just hadn't pushed play yet.
Okay, so how does it hit you now that you have watched it? Was it worth it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the film. It was a very haunting, creepy story, and I think it's interesting in the way that it kind of crafts this social horror story. It's taking place toward the end of the Iran-Iraq War, which, as the film tells us at the beginning, it ran for close to 8 years, in 1980 through 88, and it's in this part of that period when Saddam Hussein is bombing a lot of cities in Iraq over and over and over again. It's this period called the War of the Cities, where that was his way to kind of create more unrest and drive people to kind of lose morale because of all the bombing of the cities. Like he was attacking Tehran, which is where we see the bulk of this story taking place, or the whole story taking place. But he was also attacking a whole bunch of other towns and just really kind of making people feel very uncomfortable. As we see in this film, people are leaving town. They just don't want to be there anymore. And I think that setting and putting it in this time in Iran when we have a more progressive woman who had been studying to be a doctor, but ends up getting forcibly, I guess we would just say, removed from being able to continue her education because earlier in the war, she had been a political activist and happened to be on the wrong side, but she didn't know, and she was young, and because of that, she is told, well, you just can never return. We're never going to welcome you back here. So just give up your dreams and do something else. So we're in this period in her life when all of this is happening, and then this war is happening, and then putting this horror film in this period of time, I thought just was a perfect way to kind of give us this social horror that ties into so many of the other emotions that are already going on with this very dramatic story.
Yeah, I just could not agree more. I think it's a fascinating look at so many layers of horror, right? First, we have the horror of war, the shadow of war that is looming over them. And she is I think, leveraging courage in a way that may be read as stupidity, with her insistence that she's going to stay in her home. The intensity, the sort of terror that comes from watching her watch her home be sort of broken into pieces, one piece at a time. It was, I mean, like, I didn't need the actual horror element of the djinn wandering around and taking stuff like that. I thought was a icing on the cake. I was already at an anxious peak before they introduced the fact that this is also a spook movie. And so I thought it was great. The other piece, the sort of gender equality horror, the social horror of, as you say, of her being tossed out of the medical establishment for being politically active, but also, like, weirdly, for her later to be arrested for not having her cover up because she's a woman on the streets in public, that struck me because Iraj, her husband, the contrast between her living having to be covered all the time and how easy it is for him to walk the street without any covering at all, I thought was just a really like that contrast was very real for me. That was another layer of fear walking the streets when all you see are people with guns. And I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with that. I think anyone who traveled post 9/11, that's about what I remember. There were a lot of people with guns in airports, like the big guns in airports, and that's a scary thing. And this is normal for these people, and so I thought that was, I thought the setting and the setup was really, really good. Once we get to the djinn, I think they were set up really perfectly for me. I think it was. I don't think I completely understand how they got there, why they're there, what they're haunting. But I thought the interpretation of them and the way they crawl in and out of the hole in the ceiling and the sheetrock, how it bends, like those elements were great. And the final expression of that under the fabric, as the fabric becomes this thing to hide and obscure the actual spirit, that is manipulating her, I thought was extraordinary. I loved it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's so many things to respond to there. Like the way that the djinn come into the story is incredibly creepy. But just going back to just the way that the film sets things up for us, I felt right out of the gate when we first see her go and talk to this, I don't know, person who was on the board of the school, was kind of my impression. Somebody,
I imagine he's like a dean.
Yeah, somebody she had to pitch to get permission to come back and finish her schooling. While they're having their conversation, we see this whole conversation with the two of them. They're sitting in front of this huge window overlooking the city of Tehran. And in the distance, there is like a missile that comes blasting out of the sky and blows up part of the city. It was just, I don't know, it set things up in such a horrific way where these people in the city and in this country have gotten so used to just this kind of this daily onslaught of violence and killing that it's just second nature. They both glance out and they see it happening. It's not happening to them, so they just kind of go on with their conversation. And it sets up this uncomfortable way that everybody is forced to live at this particular point of time, where they're constantly surrounded by death and destruction and heartbreak and ruin. And it's just, they just have found a way to move through it. And what I found interesting, going back to your point about the djinn and how they end up, like, why are they here? What's their motivation for kind of coming into this building and kind of making it their new home and kind of focusing on her and her daughter? Is it whatever had happened to this young kid, right? Because there's this young kid that ends up having to move in. Yeah, Mehdi ends up having to move in with the Ibrahimi family. He's like their cousin or something. And he gives her a ward. He gives the daughter, Dorsa, like this, I don't know, what I can't remember what they said. It was like a clump of rolled up cat fur or something. I can't remember exactly what it is. That is supposed to help ward off evil spirits. Mom finds it when she's cleaning Dorsa's room and just thinks it's junk and tosses it without realizing. And there's a lot of interesting things happening with whatever had happened with this boy and Dorsa, because Dorsa also says he had whispered into her ear when he gave it to her. When Mom talks to her parents and says, or to his aunt and uncle, or his what would they be if they're cousins? Anyway, his relatives.
Yeah.
That, hey, he's telling her scary stories and she's having nightmares now. And they're like, well, he's mute. He can't talk.
Yeah.
So we're already getting the sense that is there something haunting him and this is what I find so interesting. The idea of the djinn in this story, is it connected to intense loss that people are going through? Did he go through an incredibly tragic event with the loss of his family that led these djinn to gravitate to him? And now they're following him and they come with him to this new building. Like, that's certainly a way you can look at it. I also was reading, or it might actually be in just like the description on Letterboxd, that the djinn arrive with this missile that crashes into the roof.
Yeah,
and
I had read
it's
that.
kind of stuck into the top of the building. I don't know. Were they here before? Did they come with the boy? I don't know if I ever quite figured that out, but I certainly felt like there was something mysterious and evil happening here, and perhaps it just involves a lot of this, the trauma that these people are suffering.
Yeah, I mean, this is trauma bombing for sure, right? When you look at, they're already living in a state of social trauma, family trauma, and their country is under extraordinary trauma that they're having to live through and with, and suddenly we're just piling on a spectral trauma. I feel like that would be my criticism of the movie. Like, I read too that the djinn arrived with the bombs somehow. But because I couldn't make sense, like, I don't think the story actually tells us that. Like, I think that may be what we wanted to have happen. That may be what we had been thinking about when we wrote it, but I didn't get it. Like, I didn't get it naturally. It felt like the place was haunted because we don't pick up early enough in the story to realize that they're living, necessarily without something going on in the building that we just don't know about.
I mean, the only clue, I suppose, that we could have that it arrived at the bombing is the dad who, his children's apartment they're the ones with the missile sticking into it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they've got this huge missile that didn't blow up that is just hanging in their space. The dad has a heart attack. They ask Shadeh to try to save him with whatever doctor training she has. She's unable to. He ends up dying. But they say, like, he wasn't acting that way initially, right? Like, there was something else there that caused him to end up having that heart attack. And that was the thing. I suppose maybe that's the hint for all of us, that they somehow arrive with the coming of the missile. But that's also, to your point, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's as coherent a reason.
Well, because they gave him a heart attack, right? I felt like he had a heart attack and maybe a stroke, and like, that's what happens. And I feel like they maybe overwrote the medical experience and underwrote the spectral stuff. Maybe that's, I mean, of course, that's probably what they intended. Give us a sense of wonder. Like, we don't need to know how they got there, and that's fine. I just felt like I left the movie wanting a little bit more out of it. I also felt like Mehdi's experience was underwritten to me, for him to be kind of an avatar or a book of the vampire for us. Like, his experience told through the adoptive parents. I felt like that was a little underwritten for the sake of mystery, maybe. But I did find myself walking away from the movie thinking those might not have been the mysteries that I would have wanted to be left with. Those were I was still trying to build the story in my head when they were taking blocks out of the wall of that story for me.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, and it's always a line in horror films. You don't want to give too much away, because then suddenly it takes kind of, that's what the horror is, like this unexplainable, horrific element. But I do think that there is something there, just like, and again, maybe that's part of the point of this, is like, war is horrific enough. There's plenty of reason for these djinn to kind of gravitate to this building that is full of trauma and say, this is a great place to build our home, and start, pulling in souls or whatever it is that they do. It seems that they've latched onto the daughter, and they're whispering sweet words into her ear, trying to woo her to kind of come over to their side and away from the mom. And that seems to be their their primary goal at this point.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if that ties into Mehdi. Like, had he, is that why he gave her this ball of cat fur to kind of ward off the spirits, because he sensed that they were after her? I'm not sure. And so, yeah, there are some questions that I feel like it could have been a little tighter on some of those elements to just help me lock in a bit more.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. And that's why I felt like I was on a car, but the wheels weren't screwed on tight enough, like it just felt a little bit wobbly in there. Not at all to take away from the fact that they had set up an absolutely perfect environment, a perfect setting, and a great visual depiction of this horror that is haunting their specific apartment, the daughter, whatever. I thought Narges Rashidi as the mom, as Shida, she was wonderful. I loved everything she brought to the screen. Like, I could watch her all day. She was just great at playing the, sort of socially victimized woman and academic, right? Just wanting to get back to work and having the societal structures of masculinity and patriarchy, causing them to, or allowing them, giving the agency to take something so important to her away. The fact that her mother was a doctor, right? What great setup for this one mistake that she made as a young person to pay dividends against her the rest of her life. I thought the way she expressed herself on screen was extraordinary. I thought she was great.
She was perfect in the role. She was wonderful to watch. A very interesting role that gives her a great journey. She's frustrated with all of that. She's still dealing with the trauma of having lost her mother 6 months before. She is frustrated with this situation that she's unable to kind of continue her career and give up her dreams. She's also in this situation where she doesn't want to leave. You had mentioned kind of the courage, kind of foolish courage to stay, but also pride, right? She doesn't want to go to his family. He keeps telling her, go stay with my parents. They will take you in. And she's like, every time I go there, your sisters are always like, Tehran gets bombed and we get stuck with all the shrapnel.
Yeah.
Like, they don't like being burdened by having to take care of these people. And so she feels that, and it's harder for her because her husband has been drafted again and is off at war. And so she has to deal with it all on her own. And also there's this fear that she has of not being able to take care of her daughter. Like, she wants to prove that she can take care of her daughter like a real mom should, which it was interesting because it's like she's not given the chance to be the doctor that she knows she can be. So is she being the mom that she has to be and forcibly kind of creating this situation where she's going to prove that she can then just take on this role that she's now being forced to actually do? And because sometimes she doesn't seem overly interested. And that was an interesting part of her character, that she never completely seems like being stay-at-home mom was, or just being mom was kind of her dream.
Mom or wife, right? Like, I found myself really stuck on that point because, at one point when it's revealed that he has been hiding his draft letter from her because he didn't want to upset her. Come on, man. Like, it's a draft letter, but their collective reaction to that experience, I thought was really interesting. He, first of all, seemed kind of okay with it. Like, I didn't get the feeling that he was that he was scared or uncertain or angry. He just felt like he was a little bit scared of his wife. She felt like she was resentful of him and less the war. Resentful of him leaving her with all of this, resentful of, to your point, her not so gradual loss of identity and her dreams, right? Like, her struggle with the loss of her career is all wrapped up in the fact that she's losing more and more of herself as a mother, as a wife, and now is about to be abandoned. And I thought that was a complicated emotional demonstration. Well,
especially because when he calls her from the front for the first time, he's telling her how he's being moved to a place that's like right on the front lines, like right in the middle of the war. So putting him in a potential place where he might not come home. And so that further cements this position for her where it's like, I'm also going to be just left on my own with all of this.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the turn as we lead into the climax of the film, that she, like what we see her so resentful about from, the culture in which she's living and what she wants to achieve, knowing that in other places in the world she would be able to achieve those things and be a mother, triggers like the maternal instinct. And the movie, the last part of the movie, chronicles like the lengths to which she will go to, protect Dorsa, to make sure that everything's fine. And I think that's sort of the climactic battle under the sheet. And that plays for me.
Yeah. And it's interesting because her whole part of the journey, or part of the logic that she has as she talks to her husband and everything, is that her daughter's doll Kimia has disappeared. And her daughter is convinced that somebody took it. She doesn't necessarily say it was these djinn, it was the ghost. She's just like, somebody took it. It's upstairs. It's always somewhere else, and they can't find it. And Mom ends up really latching onto that. And perhaps it's because subconsciously she's starting to buy into this sense of something else here, right? Like there is this sense that she has this logic, or she has a reason now to stay. I cannot leave until I find this doll for our daughter.
Right.
You wouldn't understand, but she won't be safe. They're going to follow us. Like she says that at one point, like they'll follow us if I don't find this, because it's going to protect her. It's almost like, and I don't know if this is the case, but it seems to be, where the doll has somehow become a substitute for that little ball of cat fur, right? It's almost a thing that could potentially be used to ward off these djinn from her. Like that's how it, I don't, and I'm not exactly sure how that would have happened, but it seems like that happened, because by the time she does finally find it, toward the end of the film, she realizes, oh, it's in my locked drawer where I had my medical book, and she figures that out because suddenly her medical book is in the place where this missile had been. And so she looks and she finds it, but it's in pieces. And her daughter is convinced that she had hidden it from her and ripped it into pieces, like all the arms and head are ripped off. And she's like, no, I'm a doctor. Just let me fix it. So she tapes it all up, and it seems like, okay, does that mean everything's safe now? Maybe. But as we get to the end of the film, and her daughter had dropped the doll on the stairs and everything going on with the attack under the sheets and everything, when they leave, we see that the doll's head had been ripped off again and is laying on the stairs. So does that mean that this trauma, these djinn, the horror of her life, even though they escape, is it going to be following her now?
That's a really interesting take on it. I kind of looked at a similar but not congruent, my take on this. For me, that transition in the drawer, like the drawer ended up being very important. And that marks a transition between Shide's efforts to maintain what she had, to sort of lock up her past and protect it, the medical book, with the sort of symbol of adapting to her role as mother and protector. And that doll represented to me the sort of vessel of protection, and why Dorsa was so intense about it, because she felt like she was getting the protection of her mother as imbued in that doll. Even when her mom was distracted or angry or doing her Jane Fonda workout, that doll was there to protect her. And when the doll is ripped to limb from limb and put in the drawer, that is a sign that mom isn't doing her job. Like she hasn't fully committed to this role that is ultimately more important than anything, nurturing this young life and helping it to thrive. I think that twist at the end, to me, is a marker that she's still uncertain, that Shide is still uncertain, that the sort of social spirits are going to be haunting her until she can finish the job. And the fact that she left it in a building that is potentially going to be destroyed in further, actions of war, indicate she may never be able to do it. And that is an incredibly horrifying thought, that this woman who is on the cusp of adapting to her role as a woman is always going to have these ghosts. That it's less about Dorsa and much more about Shide's relationship with her own identity.
That's interesting.
How's that hit you?
I love it. I think that's really a fascinating way to look at it. And this idea that perhaps also, even though she was able to save her daughter and get out of the city, which she should have done much
earlier, when the doll had head.
Right. Get to a place of safety. She has now permanently kind of created a scar in the relationship between herself and her daughter that may not ever be able to be healed, because in that greatest moment of her daughter's need, she leaves her in the basement to go run upstairs. Now, granted, the djinn are playing with her mind by that point, and she's confused because she thinks she's hearing her daughter upstairs, and she's like, wait, is that my real daughter upstairs, or is my real daughter who I just carried out of there? Where is the trick? Because one of these is obviously not my real daughter. She takes a shot and leaves her daughter in the basement to run upstairs and, quote, save her daughter, who actually isn't her daughter. And that's, I think, what's so fascinating is that moment when she comes back downstairs, one, when she ran out on her daughter, she like pushed her to the side, and now her daughter has like a bloody nose from it and is accusatory. It's like, you left me here. And I think that's that rift in their relationship. Perhaps that's the break on the doll's head again, that again, she just won't be able to recover from.
Well, you call it a trick. I might call it a test, right? Like that might be the test. Is she like, would a real mother have known the difference between a djinn upstairs and the real daughter right next to her, right? Yeah. Like that's the horrifying realization that I think she comes to when she comes back downstairs and the daughter's standing in the basement with the flashlight. She's like, no, it's not my fault. Like, well, maybe you should have known better. Maybe had you been a different kind of mother, you would have known.
Which again speaks in such an interesting way to this particular society where, as you get older, you have to put yourself into a chador and kind of cover yourself up, and you're the relationship between women and or mothers and daughters is always under this shroud that's part of the society where you're never even as you get older, you get to a point where you're not looked at as somebody who has as much right to pursue that medical career. Yeah. It's very easy for that man to probably have said, sure, you can come back. But there's also something in the way that he says it that just feels like, I'm putting you in your place. You need to understand that you just don't deserve that. And I think that also just weighs so much on just this relationship between mother and daughter through that whole thing.
And look at all the times that she gets told to be in your place. Like that last, she's running barefoot from the haunted apartment, and the soldiers arrest her and take her to jail, right? Yeah. In order to
whip her,
to whip her, right? For not wearing the thing, for actually having an identity, you are punished as a woman in that there, and that just to add an extra layer of social horror is pretty interesting.
And that's interesting also because it's like, it's so frightening in the apartment and feels so unsafe that she's doing what a mother should. She grabs her daughter and flees, and ends up getting caught by society and said, no, you did it wrong. Even the woman who comes into her cell is like, what were you thinking? Yeah. Like, they're going to do this to you. Why would you run out of your house without your Shandor or Shador? It's just, it says a lot about the way that this society is and how people view women.
Yeah, it's rough. What do we know about Babak Anvari? This was Anvari's first
feature film. Yes. Yeah. Anvari is an Iranian, born in Iran, grew up in England, so British Iranian, and this is still to this day his most well-known film. He's done a couple other films afterward. He did Wounds and I Came By. I don't think either of which were received as well as this film was. Currently is slated, I don't know where this stands, but slated to helm the fourth Cloverfield film. We'll see where that ends up going, if it if it happens at all. And then is also directing another film, upcoming, a thriller with Rosamund Pike and Matthew Rhys. A daughter, it's called Hallow Road. A daughter rings her parents for help after causing a fatal automobile accident. So that'd be an interesting one. I don't know a lot about him, but I find his I just like the style of storytelling he's doing here. I'm curious about the other two films, but again, they haven't been rated incredibly high, so I'm not exactly sure. Wounds was a psychological horror, and I Came By, I think, was also a crime. That was a crime thriller. So, yeah.
Have you seen any of Monsterland? That's a TV series he EP'd.
No, I have not.
And
heard
it looks
of that
like
one.
he only directed one episode.
Oh, it's a horror drama anthology series. Okay, so each episode's its own little horror episode. How many episodes is it? Just eight episodes on
8 episodes.
Hulu.
Yeah, and he was an EP on all of them for the show, and directed one of them. Trying to figure out which one.
Based on the book North American Lake Monsters Stories. Interesting. He directed Newark, New Jersey episode. They each take place. Each episode is named after a city.
We've got a Eugene, Oregon, Andy.
You do. Look at that.
Scary place. We don't have in Arizona. Closest we can get to is Texas.
Louisiana, Oregon, New York, Illinois, Texas, Michigan. Huh.
All right. Well, I'm not. It's water stories, horror. I'm probably not going to watch it. I'll tell you, that's going to be much. I'm not ready to expose that part.
Yeah, I know. But I tell you, after watching this, I'm definitely curious to check out some of his other films, see what else he's doing. For sure.
I really enjoyed this, and it's a bummer to look at his IMDb ratings on his other movies, other productions, and see that they're not above. Some of the shorts get above 6 into the 7s, but after this, which was a 6.8 on the IMDb scale, it's a 4.1 for Wounds, 5.7 for Monsterland, 6.2 for I Came By. So maybe that's one to start with.
There you go. Yeah.
All right.
You mentioned Nargis Rashidi as mom, but I have to call out Avin Manshadi as Dorsa. That little girl, like, what a performance. Like, she was so good in this role, and she carried the horror, she carried the anger at mom. There was a point where she's so mad at mom that she just like attacks mom, and like just the way that she played it, I just thought was perfect. Child actors sometimes can be real tricky, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like watching a horror film that they're given a little more meat and opportunity to do some interesting things, and I just enjoyed her so much. Like, it was almost hard for me to decide, did I like the daughter more or the mom more? Like, they just both were such top-notch performances for me.
Absolutely. And I'll say she went on to do another movie in 2021 called Mitra that I have not seen, but looks absolutely awesome and scary, about 37 years after her daughter was executed in Iran. Hala finds the woman who betrayed her. The traitor, now a loving mother herself and just arrived in the Netherlands, does not recognize Hala and trusts her as an older and wiser countryman. So it looks like a identity betrayal revenge movie that looks very, very good. And Avin Manshadi is in it and looks principal. So
nice.
I thought she was great.
I have to check that one. We haven't really, in our Ghost Story series, we haven't really talked much about the djinn themselves. And I think it's worth just kind of having a discussion about those because of the way that horror element is treated here. We're getting, initially it's just kind of flashes of figures in the back, things like that. We do get a jump scare that I wasn't expecting. It worked very well, of a hand crashing through the window.
Oh no! For me, it was the bed.
The
When he was, it wasn't him in the bed.
Oh,
but she was in the middle. That grabbed me.
yeah, that was pretty creepy. But
Yeah,
and
the
then the
hand
other one
got
is
you
when
right.
she runs out of the apartment. She thinks her daughter ran out, and she turns around, and you see a woman in a chador standing by the doorway. Right?
Yeah.
It's just like in the background that suddenly just like whooshes like a very fast ghost into the
Hmm.
apartment and slams the door shut. That completely made me jump. Like I wasn't expecting that to be there. I wasn't expecting it to move the way it did. But then you have other creepy things. You already mentioned like how they go through the crack in the ceiling, and like we get that one moment she runs into the room and looks up, and you just see the last like foot or something of whatever it is kind of creeping up into the ceiling as the ceiling closes on it. Like there are some really creepy things. Oh, and when she does go back up, she leaves her daughter in the basement, runs back up, and she hears her under the bed. She tries to help her out, and
Yeah.
then the daughter's head like disappears. It's just like enormous mouth. Like
What was that?
that was,
Oh my God. That
yeah,
was awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, the jinn are interesting, and I did not know much about the jinn. Apparently, they've been around a long time, pre-Islam. Reportedly, pre-Islam, they were created from smokeless fire. They're invisible to humans, but they can interact with the human world. That's why I guess they're wearing sheets a lot of the time in this movie.
Yeah, they're very, very tied into the wind, right?
But what is interesting, I think, about this in terms of the culture of horror or things that of the supernatural in the Islamic world is that the jinn are not good or evil, right? They're traditionally believed as having free will, just like humans. They're like the dark matter of humans. They can do whatever they want, but they can also go through walls and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have like should we have done a pre-show list of our favorite jinn movies? I don't know of any others besides the genie.
Yeah, right, exactly. Now, I think that's what's interesting is like it's a ghost story. You have these phantom appearances throughout the place, but it's just in a different part of the world. So it's essentially the same sort of thing, but just treated a little different. Like they blow in the wind, but it's like okay, you could say the same about ghosts. Like there's something because it's ethereal and it's just moving through the air that it's like wind whipping
Yeah.
across you and everything. The way that all of it plays, I think, is really haunting, and the way that they treat these characters always is a surprise. It's never the same, and it just always kept me off guard. You know, she
Yeah.
turns that one time to the doorway, and there's that old man like standing in the doorway, and then he's the one who kind of goes up through the ceiling. It's like, what was he doing there? And then there was the woman standing in the room that her daughter said, "Oh, she was just standing here too." It's like, you know, these forces that just don't want to let
Yeah.
go to the point where she gets her daughter away from this. You know, the chador kind of turns into this massive sheet maze
so good.
that she's stuck in. She's trying to find her daughter through the whole thing, and she gets her out of there, but then the sheet drops to the floor and turns the whole thing into like tar or something, and mom is like sinking into it, and this is where the daughter has to kind of come to her rescue. And it just so creepy the way all of it was portrayed. Like you just don't know where it's going to go next.
So here is from my rigorous academic research on Wikipedia and allthat'sinteresting.com. Here are some things that the jinn can do that were in some cases not displayed in this movie, but make me want to see more movies about the jinn. They're shape-shifting. They can appear as animals, humans, or other forms. We kind of have that.
Yeah.
Weird mouth creature,
Yeah.
capable of possessing humans and causing illness or madness. Do you think that's going on with the dad upstairs when the bomb hits?
That it could be like that could be said to there
Yeah.
could be some element to that. And honestly, I mean, it could be something else going on in this house. It's never completely said. Like who actually, like how much of a physical presence do they have? Could they have been the one that actually destroyed the videotape? Or could they have possessed mom or Dorsa, and one of them did it while possessed? So who knows?
Well, number 3, they have the ability to fall in love and have sexual relationships with humans.
He was
We
in
didn't
bed
see
with
that
her.
in this movie.
Well, he did get into bed with her.
I know, but they didn't do it.
No, but maybe there was an initial draw.
Okay. They possess bodily needs similar to humans: eating, drinking, sleeping, and
Hmm.
procreating.
Interesting.
Okay. Didn't see that
So you
coming.
get tired when you're a
Yeah.
ghost too. Yeah.
Yeah. And capable of using magic and extraordinary powers. And that is, I mean, that takes to how they move around. Like sometimes we see them under sheets moving around in the hallways, but also when they crawl up into the hole in the ceiling, it's not like they're going through the ceiling upstairs. They're going into the element of the building.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
That's
something
somewhere.
or
Yeah.
blowing away. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? But very, very cool. Did not know that about the djinn.
Yeah.
Makes me curious to see other djinn things.
Well, and they also can grant wishes when you put them into a little bottle.
Yes, they can. They djinn hate bottles. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was really fascinating. We haven't really talked about the look much. Did you like the way that the film looked? How did
Yes.
the cinematography and everything play for you?
What an interesting palette, right? Like it's very sort of earth tone. It feels very of a piece with the desert kind of community. It's excellent use of darkness and contrast, and every time we get to go from the bright of day to the dark of the basement and the flashlight, I thought was a fun visual exploration of the place. I think they used it well. We get a lot of disorienting camera work, right? That going from lockdown to a lot of handheld to some shaky cam, and I thought that variety was not overused. It wasn't so disorienting that I was felt myself sort of nauseated. But it was used very, very effectively. Thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. There were some interesting moments in it. And I noticed as well, like some shots where it's like, I was like, okay, so it's just a shot from the doorway of the couple in bed, for example, or having a conversation, but it's handheld. Like we're making some choice to actually not let it completely rest, but you just kind of get that sense of that movement going on. And that was kind of interesting to kind of make those choices and see how it played throughout, and with all of those earth tones, and then dropping everything to just those grays when it's like where the missile was or the basement. It kept it feeling, or even like the jail when she's
Right.
put in jail, just kind of
Hopeless.
Yeah, it really kind of gives you the sense of it. So
I felt like the handheld was used really effectively when the two were talking as a couple. It did feel like it was inappropriate for me to be a part of their conversation, and it kept following them in a way that was disorienting. And I think I thought it was really interesting to be so close to these people as they're having this kind of intimate, frustrating argument or conversation with each other that is based wholly in subtext, and we got to be very close to them because of that camera.
Yeah, that is interesting, and I think it just speaks to putting us into this world also, where I always wonder about films like this. It's like, do people in Iran, is it uncomfortable for them to watch the film because they're watching a woman who's not wearing the chador, not covering up? Like, where is the line? Is it because it's a movie? Is it fine? Like, I don't know how that all plays out, but I do think it's interesting. I don't know. I'm guessing that for a lot of this, I don't know. I'm making an assumption that perhaps they shot this just on a soundstage in the UK, since that's where Babak is from. And the crew, like, you see a lot of the people on the crew, a lot of, like, Kit Frazier was cinematographer, Christopher Barwell edited it, Gavin Cullen, Will McGilvery did the music. Like, I have a sense that it was it is kind of a international co-production between, I think, United Kingdom, Jordan, and Qatar. So it's entirely possible they shot in one of those countries as well. But I just have a sense that they were shooting it in a way where it didn't really, they weren't putting the people in a situation where it's like, well, it's a little awkward to be filming this because you're not wearing your chador or something.
Yeah, right. Makes it easier to just get the job done. The IMDb page reports 2 issues in the goofs page. One of them I caught, The other one I did not, but I think it is perfect for you to have caught because it's a mistake in the credits. Did you catch a musical mistake in the credits?
I don't think I did.
The film the song Only You by Yaz in the United States, Yazoo everywhere else, is listed in the credits, but it is not in the film. However, the song Don't Go by the same is featured in one scene and is not listed in the credits. They put the wrong song by Yaz in the credits. You'll always be Yaz to me. The second is an anachronism. And this one I did catch because they were, this is purportedly taking place before 1988. And the cupboards in Dorsa's room has a sticker of SpongeBob SquarePants, which didn't air until 1999.
Oh, gotcha. That's funny.
Nice touch.
Totally missed that. Yeah.
Right.
That's funny. Well, it's an interesting film. I'm really glad to have watched it. And in the scope of this Ghost Stories series, it's interesting that the films that I ended up picking for this particular series all have more of this social horror feel than just straight up ghost stories.
You might say you really unintentionally navigate your own horror sensibilities toward elevated horror. You don't even know it, but you're just so elevated.
Right, elevated mindset.
You've embraced it.
Apparently so. We'll just wait till next week's. We'll see what we have to say about that one.
Outstanding.
All right, well, we'll be right back, but first, our credits.
Tab. The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Dor Ben Lulu, Ido K, Tillman Celestiu, Oriol Novella, and Eli Catlin. It's a whole orchestra this week. Whole orchestra. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
This is you.
Is it me? Tab.
Mama, do you hear that scratching? It's coming from inside the walls again. I think it knows we're talking about it. They say it feeds on fear, on the unspoken anxieties that claw at the edges of our reality, Mama. The pressure, the expectations, the constant feeling that something is watching, judging us, waiting, Mama.
Sound familiar? Well, good news. While we can't help with actual malevolent entities trapped in your drywall, we can help you express your deep-seated societal anxieties in a stylish and socially acceptable way. Just visit the Next Reel merch store, your one-stop shop for all your horror-themed retail therapy needs. We've got a terrifyingly trendy collection from t-shirts that scream, "I understand the allegorical subtext," to mugs that whisper, "My coffee is as dark as my existential dread." So, the next time you feel the oppressive weight of societal expectations bearing down, just slip on your limited edition Next Reel hoodie, and remember, you're not alone, at least not in your struggle to find the perfect podcast merch. Visit the Next Reel merch store today. Visit the Next Reel merch store today at thenextreel.com. Nextreel.com/merch. Nextreel.com/merch. Just visit thenextreel.com/merch and tell them the shadows sent you.
Mama.
Mama. Oh my God.
Yeah, it took too long to come up with that bit of idiocy. It's way too dumb for the time that I spent on that.
I was not expecting that one. That's funny. Mama.
My favorite. This is my favorite thing I think I may have ever created. On the unspoken anxieties that claw at the edges of our reality, Mama.
Oh my God. That is so good.
Okay.
All right.
I don't even remember what comes next. Awards, Andy. How did it do at award season? Did we get a little first run bump?
This was a film that played well at festivals and in the award circuit. It had 21 wins with 23 other nominations. Starting with the Saturn Awards, it was nominated for Best International Film, but lost to The Handmaiden. And Rashidi was nominated for Best Actress, but lost to Mary Elizabeth Winstead in 10 Cloverfield Lane. How does that strike you, that matchup?
Well, I think it's interesting that Babak is on track for the next Cloverfield movie. What do you think about that? That might have been auspicious.
That's interesting, yeah.
I do think I really enjoyed Winstead. I think that's the performance I probably would have gone with.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
At the BAFTAs, it was nominated for Outstanding British Film of the Year, but lost to Daniel Blake. And it was nominated for Outstanding Debut by a British Writer, Director, or Producer, and won. At the British Independent Film Awards, it was nominated for Best British Independent Film and Best Director, but both of those lost to American Honey. It did win the Douglas Hickox Award for Anvari. Rashidi was nominated for Best Actress, but lost to Sasha Lane in American Honey, and Manshidi won Best Supporting Actress. At the Film Independent Spirit Awards, it was nominated for Best International Film, but lost to Tony Erdmann. Good old Fangoria Chainsaw Awards nominated it for Best Foreign Language Film, but lost to Train to Busan, which I can see that one too. Mm-hmm. And at the Blood Guts UK Horror Awards, which I don't know, maybe that's their equivalent of the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, it was nominated for Best International Film, but lost to Train to Busan. Rashidi won for Best Actress, and Babak won for Best Director. So yeah, a lot of wins, a lot of other nominations.
At least some good attention on a good movie.
Yes.
So this was, I know a lot has changed in the world of Netflix, and now Netflix is a real fountain of data. I think the seas have turned, and now Netflix just gives away all kinds of data. So you probably had no trouble getting any of the numbers.
Oh, No, yeah, the plight of a Netflix distributed film, man, it really leaves me wanting. I can just find no information on this for the budget. I'm guessing because Netflix acquired it after it premiered January 2016 at Sundance, that they just kind of closed it all off and wouldn't tell anybody anything. The movie still did get a limited theatrical release October 7th, 2016, opposite The Girl on the Train, The Birth of a Nation, Middle School, The Worst Years of My Life, and Shin Godzilla, not to mention the limited release of The Greasy Strangler. This was released on 14 screens and earned almost $29,000 domestically and $123,000 internationally for a total gross of $200,500 in today's dollars. But I just have no way to know if it actually made any money back. Again, the plight of Netflix.
You're doing the Lord's work, Andy. You're really fighting a good fight. I'm glad we did this movie. I'm really glad to have seen it. It is such an interesting look at, certainly an area of sex-crazed genies that I didn't expect.
I think there might be more sex-crazed genies. I don't know if this is the case, but I have yet to see George Miller's 1,000 Nights or whatever that was, the genie movie that he made.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
1,000 Nights, was that his Arabian Nights thing?
I don't remember how many nights was that movie.
Well, I think it's 101 Arabian, or it says 1,001. How many thousands of Arabian Nights are there? Is it like 5 years of Arabian Nights?
It is called, what was it called? 3,000 Years of Longing.
Okay, that's
years
more
even
nights
more years
than I would have expected. So many years of nights. All
Yeah.
right. Well, worth it.
Yeah. No, really interesting film. I'm glad to have seen it. Finally checked it off my list, and it's definitely a film that will keep me thinking about just these things that were traumatizing so many people in Iran back in the day.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings, but first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, Jairo Bustamante's 2019 film La Llorona.
La Llorona.
Oh, this is my turn, isn't it? Are you ready?
So ready.
Hold on. Oh, I just made a mess of this. Okay. In ancient Arabian folklore, there exist powerful supernatural beings known as djinn, or genies. These mystical entities, born of smokeless fire, have captured the imagination of people for centuries. Tales of genies granting wishes to those who discover their magical lamps have become a staple in popular culture, from the stories of 1001 Nights to the beloved Disney character Genie in Aladdin. What if I told you you didn't need to find a genie's lamp to have your film-loving wishes granted? What if there was a way to unlock a world of exclusive content, engaging discussions, and a vibrant community of fellow movie enthusiasts? Well, you're in luck. By joining the Next Reel's family of film podcasts, you can make all your cinematic dreams come true. For just $5 a month or $55 a year, you'll gain access to a treasure trove of benefits that would make even the most powerful genie jealous. Picture yourself with early access to ad-free episodes of your favorite shows, like the Next Reel Film Podcast, The Film Board, Sitting in the Dark, Movies We Like, and CinemaScope. Your wish for uninterrupted high-quality content will be granted, as if by magic. As a member, you'll also find yourself part of a thriving community of film lovers on our private Discord channels. Step into a realm where every conversation revolves around the movies you adore. Share your thoughts, engage in friendly debates, and forge lasting friendships with people who share your passion for cinema. Your membership will also grant you access to extended editions of certain episodes, providing you with even more in-depth analysis and behind-the-scenes insights, as if you've stumbled upon a hidden cave of cinematic treasures. Why wait for a chance encounter with a mystical being? Take control of your film appreciation journey and become a member of the Next Reel's family of podcasts today. Head to truestory.fm/join, look for the Next Reel, and unclick a work of cinematic wonders for just $5 a month or $55 a year. Your film-loving wishes are about to be granted, and you don't even need to rub a lamp. Just click join and let the magic begin.
Welcome to the Cave of Wonder. Okay. Letterboxd, Andy. Letterboxd. You know Letterboxd. It's where all the stars live. Mm-hmm.
All those stars. Yes,
so
many
map
stars.
Of the tours of the stars. What are you going to do for this movie?
I had a good time with this one. I really enjoyed it. I feel like this lands at a 4-star for me. 4 stars and a heart. It's something I would enjoy watching again. I think it just created a good mood, set up a really interesting world. I had a great time with it. 4 stars and a heart.
I think that's where it lands for me. It's a movie that I really look forward to introducing other people to. Other people who know how to read, because, there's always the captions people. They don't want to read their movies. But if you know how to read, those people, I look forward to introducing this movie to you.
That's right.
It's great.
Well, that will be 4 stars and a heart over on our account on Letterboxd, which is at the Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about Under the Shadow? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Okay, so they're the good ones, like really thoughtful, like this is why you join Letterboxd reviews, are too long to read. So I have a pair of those that are not too long to read.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah. First, 3.5 from Pete Stavs, who says, "Of course, if you see a portal in the ceiling of your living room, you'll cover it with masking tape." Brilliant. And then this one, I actually really, this one gets the social horror element of the movie. TBT to win that person dressed up as the Babadook for a party, but it turned out to be more of a grown-ups drinking wine vibe. I love it so much. Okay, what do you got?
I have a 5-star by Emily Eskepeter, who says this: "Take away my medical degree, fine. Take away my Jane Fonda workout video, these djinn are gonna pay."
I have to comment on that. She is maybe the most enthusiastic participant in the Jane Fonda workout video that I've ever seen. Like, her form was
You never watched
perfect.
my mom in my youth.
Really? Your mom had the Jane Fonda
Oh,
thing.
my
though.
goodness.
Mine did too,
Yeah,
but she was never quite as precise.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. She was pretty precise in this.
Yeah.
She was on point with her.
Militaristic.
To the point where
her
she
fidelity.
had memorized it and was doing it after her tape had already been destroyed.
As long as she was staring at the TV, she could do it. Doesn't matter what's on.
May as well.
Could be nothing. So good. Thanks, Letterboxd.